science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Strategic salutations, all you cognonauts out there, and welcome to Exofathom, the show that dares to explore the outside reaches of understanding. I am your host, Nick, and welcome to another Exobits episode, which we are doing every Friday night at 8 p.m. We're going to be doing things a little bit different today. I am not going to be the host for the evening. The conversation has been curated by our co-host, Mike. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. A little nervous.
Oh, yeah, you'll do great. We also have, I'm good, man. We also have the lovely Ayla here. How you doing, Ayla?
Oh, I'm doing good. And Mike, you're going to do fine. You got this.
Oh, yeah.
No nervous levels rising at all.
None. This is a safe space. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. And I am not going to do much promo on the front end. I'll do that on the back once we get this really cool conversation done. So without any more further ado, Mike, why don't you take it away?
Sure. First off, before we hop in, how familiar are you with Sun Tzu's Art of War?
Personally, I have the book and I've read it a little bit, but I'm not, it's been probably about 10 years since I read it, so not incredibly familiar.
No, it's not too long ago.
Not too long ago. Although 2020 feels like it's already been 10 years. So.
Right.
True that.
10 years in 1 year. How about you, Ayla?
I think I read bits and pieces in college. I remember having a turbulent experience those times, and I would flip the book, like you just open a random page, and I would say, okay, this is my go-to strategy for the week. But like Nick, it's been a really long time, and I'm excited to refresh on the concepts.
Pretty cool. Let's just dive in. Let's skip over mine. I came across it like in university and read bits and pieces here, but I got a chance to listen to the audiobook on the flight over to New Zealand. That was a 8 hours spent listening to it on repeat.
Oh, I bet.
So the fragment that I picked out is actually from, I think it's like the third chapter, called Attack by Stratagem. And it goes like this. We know that there are 5 essentials for victory. 1, he will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. 2, he will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. 3, he will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. 4, he will win who prepared himself, wakes to take the enemy unprepared. He will win who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign. And so I kind of want to get into it from like a life point of view, not kind of extrapolate some of the things that we can use to our day to day. So just first off, are there any initial thoughts that hit you? Is something like life supposed to be won?
That's a good question. Well, I think that's kind of drives at the core of all of our searches in life, right? Is there some sort of prize to win at the end? And I think that there could be yes and no, which usually is my go-to. Yes and no.
That superposition answer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Always. But no, I think there is a certain level of stratagem that you can use in your everyday life. Now, of course, when we're talking about war, things are applied a little bit differently. But yes, I do think that there is a way to win life, but it's tailor fit to each person.
That makes sense. What about you, Ayla? Have you ever won life?
Oh, that's hilarious. Have you ever won life? That's a hard question to answer. But you know what's funny? The concept of winning, and even this book, you have to answer any questions with the lens of a war being present. So I think under that kind of lens, yeah, I mean, we have our war within ourselves. We have wars that we fight throughout our lives, be it a battle of emotion or a battle between an enemy. I mean, I'm sure people don't have like overt enemies, but you certainly have like a frenemy or two or a boss or something like that that might drive you nuts. And I think it's just interesting to think about battling, but in this day and age where most of us don't see an actual war, but the war is the daily little battles that we wage, whether internally or externally.
No, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree. I guess I've kind of been in the mindset of seeing life as just one long war. And I don't know if that's just like my personal experience, but I definitely do believe that on the day to day, there's little wars that happen, and then as your life goes on, those wars end up, or little battles that happen, and they end up becoming a much larger war. And I guess that kind of rolls into the first thing of like, first off, it's like picking the battles in life to choose. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. And I'm sure as a married couple, you guys have to bite your tongue at times to get away from an argument or something like that.
Oh, you went there. You went there.
I
Nick?
actually no.
No, never.
No, we kind of just slug it out, and then
whatever happens.
Yeah. Well, Ayla and I are both we don't like to hold grudges and anger. So if we ever get into a argument, it's usually over pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, but I do understand the concept for sure, and that is something that you can do interpersonally with all of your relationships. I think there are times when you understand that you may be able to win the certain battle that you're dealing with somebody else, but is it worth it? Sometimes it isn't, and I think there's true wisdom in understanding that sometimes certain battles aren't worth fighting.
Yeah,
Definitely.
or certain battles don't exist. Sometimes people can say things or do things that may land a certain way, but then when you kind of contextualize it, you realize that that's actually just a symptom of something else. So that gives you a little more insight into like, oh, well, this isn't a battle, but this something else is going on. So yeah, I don't know. I'd agree with what you'd say, Nick.
Yeah, well, and I think
Gold
too,
star.
I think just too, to add on to that is that you can cultivate that in your adulthood through just experience, and so understanding which battles are worth fighting and which are not is not something that you might be just born with knowing. It takes trial and error, and it takes sometimes making a bad decision, or throwing your hat into a fight that you're not going to win, or that could cause damage to the relationship. And so I think that just like in war, any good general would know when the battle is worth fighting or not because of the multiple battles they have experienced. I think it's similar, and it becomes easier to understand which battles are worth fighting.
So it's like it's a skill that you develop over time as far as picking your battles with anyone in any format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think so too, like, Nick brought up a good point, just like interpersonally, right? Like it could be a friendship, a marriage, a couple. I think, you definitely, as you get older, as you know yourself more, you start to realize like what really is important to you. And usually those fundamentals are like, trust and mutualness. I mean, I wouldn't be able to break it down real quick, but you know what I mean? Like there's just certain things that you want in a friendship or a relationship, and you hone that in, and you have your negotiables and your non-negotiables. And I think as you kind of get older, you start to, like know which fights to pick.
All that off. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah,
understanding yourself too, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, like the next little fragment goes into that about knowing yourself and knowing the enemy and the ways that battles can go uh, based off of that knowledge. Have you ever had like a Pyrrhic victory in like work life or uh, like sort of like a battle that you wish you didn't win?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could pick a time specifically, but it kind of reminds me of um, the experience I'm sure most people have where they know something or they know they're right about something or they know they're right about a certain person or their behavior or where they might end up. And you don't necessarily want to be right, but you're just noticing the pattern, you know?
Yeah,
And I think that it probably that's the closest I can think of. I don't know a particular instance, but I definitely can relate to seeing the writing on the wall, as it were, and not necessarily wanting to be correct about it.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's how I feel about the stock market.
Yeah.
It's a losing battle to fight the Fed. Don't fight the Fed.
Yeah, it's
Like
very
Earl one.
house always wins.
All right. Well, I guess is any closing remarks on that as far as like just picking your battles or this or that skill?
I think it's something that we work all of our lives to understand. That's for sure.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and we've mentioned a little bit of the Stoic philosophers, and I definitely have been reading more about them. And I mean, gosh, I tell you, so much of what I've learned as I get older is to move slower in this life. So like, if there is a heated battle or argument or whatnot, sometimes it's better to just pause and think and listen and take a minute, take a breath. And so I think it's interesting, when to fight and when not to fight. I would say when not to fight is like if you feel like you're coming from a place that's not maybe like honorable, then to step back and expose and wonder, like, why am I fighting? And just
Yeah.
kind of think about that. Like, what are you fighting for? You have to have a good reason, I would say.
So you need a reason to start a battle.
I think so. I think you need a very like core fundamental like impetus,
Oh, I
purpose.
don't know if you need the reason, but it's smart to have one.
Good point.
Casa Bellas. Or is it Casa Bella, I think? There's a term for like proper a proper way to start a war. Or a
Is that
battle.
like the glove, the white glove, where you smack
The
it
duel?
across
The duel
person's
glove?
face? Yeah. Just
Yeah. I think that's the proper way.
okay. I need to find the term for that.
So, yeah. No. So once in a battle though, because we've all been in battles, there's forces. We control our forces, whether those be like emotions or in a competitive business setting, your business versus the other business or what have you. So it brings up our second point. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like the Bushido code almost, of which like the most dangerous warrior is the one who keeps his sword sheathed.
Yeah.
It's like that idea that you should understand what you're capable of and apply the appropriate response to each situation.
So yeah, but as far as to like the extreme of, I guess, the emotion or the reaction, right? Like the inferior forces implies a less extreme reaction versus superior forces. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I think that that's kind of what I mean is that, if I'm thinking of it in the form of a samurai isn't going to draw his sword on a villager. He's going to draw his sword on another samurai,
Correct.
So it's the idea that and it's actually, it's just smart strategy. You don't want to expend your resources on something that is unnecessary. If you can do something minimally, then you do it that way. and only expend the resources you need when you absolutely need to.
I would agree. Well, are you a fan of overkill?
Well, I mean, overkill certainly has its place in the war aspect. I don't know if it has its place in interpersonal connections, but like we can talk about the dropping of the atomic bombs. I mean, on Japan, that was a modern representation of overkill, in my opinion, for sure. It was meant to shock and awe and teach a lesson to the people.
Yeah, and it was helpful to avoid that massive ground invasion. That would have been sucky.
Yeah, well, certainly it obviously had its obviously had its reasons, but if we're being honest, the dropping of 2 nuclear bombs on one tiny island is kind of overkill.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. So I'm kind of thinking of forces though as like as a way to get a task done though. Like maybe not like the Bushido code, I guess, but more like with stock trading, your money you can consider your forces, and there's going to be times when you have a lot of money to invest and play around with, and there's going to be times when you're just like in poker, you're just short stacked. So in that respect, like, have you ever tried to do too much with too little, or have you ever had so much that the decision didn't matter in the battle?
Well, I mean, I guess in personal experience, it would be something like I have a lot of experience in some sort of field, and I don't necessarily have to utilize my entirety of my resources to excel in that field. But no, I don't know if I've ever had that sort of experience of doing too much in a certain interpersonal battle, but I do definitely understand the concept for sure.
Ayla?
Are you there?
I am
Ayla,
here.
she
Okay.
ran
I'm
away.
I'm
She went to go to the
pondering.
bathroom.
No, I'm
More.
pondering. Well, you scrapped the Bushido code, and I actually was going to go in like a totally different direction, because I think it's interesting, going back to can you win life? I think that there is, okay, so like think about like codes of honor, right? Like, and I'm thinking of Kill Bill, for example. Well, if you have a code of honor, there's a way that you conduct yourself. You clean your sword after a kill. You focus your energies. You devote all your energy to this one thing. But then you have other characters in that film or in books and things like that where they don't clean their blade. They're messy. They lie. They cheat. And so I think it's interesting when you talk about winning, like, is it important to win the war if you sacrifice your own personal code of honor and ethic and what you want to do in your personal life? That's like a tension that I think has been swirling in my mind. And then just with inferior and superior forces, it seems like they're saying to take a measured approach to your enemy so that you're kind of moving around like Bruce Lee's water, right? Like you're able to adapt to different situations. And I see that a lot in like soft power, like diplomats and things. If you hang around with diplomats, I have a really weird past, but one of the things that they're really good at is they can talk to different audiences and groups of people, and they can tailor the same talking points to almost anybody so that they can kind of get that information across. If they're talking to a snotty Harvard person, they can impress them. If they're talking to someone who's suspicious of them, they can tailor their words to them. And I think that that's kind of indicative of this particular saying is being adaptable and flexible, and also being able to sum up your opponent and respond accordingly.
It's also just resource management. It makes good strategy to not expend resources unnecessarily. And so if you have an inferior force that you're up against, you understand that you do not need to expend the same resources that you would need to if it was a superior force, where Mike kind of mentioned the sort of like shock and awe overkill aspect. That probably would be way more necessary for a superior force or maybe an equal force. But sacrificing your resources for an overkill move on an inferior enemy, it makes sense if you are trying to send a message, but on a strictly resource level, it doesn't.
That's a good point too.
No, indeed. And I guess there's this notion of honor that keeps being brought up. So there's honor in battle. Or is there honor in battle, and is there honor in, like, is it better to conduct your life in an honorable way if that means losing all the time? Or if you're dishonorable maybe once or twice, you can kind of get ahead and mitigate those losses?
Well, I mean, I think it's really up to your own personal code. If you're okay with maybe taking, circuitous routes to get ahead, then that's not really going to bother you. But, like the saying is, all is fair in love and war, right? So, I mean, if we're talking about a battlefield here, you have to do everything you can to survive and make sure that your side wins. If this is sort of like a career sort of thing, then you might be able to apply the same philosophy, but there's going to have to be a balance struck, because in a system of, employment, if you are going to use that sort of cutthroat, technique, you better make sure you're on top of the heap, because if you're not, then you're going to get axed pretty quickly. So, if you're using that sort of modality to get yourself to the top, then that's usually, how we get these CEOs and all of these bigwigs. Then, at that point, their position is safe, and they don't have to be held accountable for their actions before.
Yeah, it's definitely a strange situation that I see just in like corporate America, where dishonorable behavior is almost rewarded, and it does create a battle like between individuals or teams, even within the same company.
Oh yeah.
So it's strange. The whole honor thing is almost limiting, but not. I'm not too sure. But now we're kind of
limiting in a business sense for sure, because in a war sense, think about the way we used to do war with each other in early American history. Standing in a line and just shooting muskets at each other from 100 yards away, and then slowly
or running at each other with bayonets.
Yeah, I mean, there's all of this that's basically why the Americans won the revolution, is because they decided to drop that whole honor thing and start hiding in trees and picking off the British soldiers. Like this sort of like honorific British sort of battle style was a catastrophe, and it really only worked because the British were like the people with the muskets. But then once everybody else got muskets, it was like, okay, just line up to die. It stopped making sense.
It was like an honorable way to fight a war, but a dishonorable way to run a war, it seems like.
Certainly.
Like I'm the officer, so I don't have to worry about being shot. I'm just gonna send all these men up in a line, get like 3 or 4 of them. Oh well, whatever happens.
Yeah, it's very chess. That comes from that.
Yeah, chess is a fun game to play when you start thinking about like, whoa, like if these were actual little pieces waging a little war, like you've got the queen doing some crazy shit over here, you've got these pawns, you're just sending them into battle, and like like I think Nick mentioned something about resource management, and like if you have 500 soldiers each and you all have bayonets and guns and things, like it's going to be a pretty even battle. But if there's 1,500 to 500, then then we get back to that other tenant. It's like, do you send all 1,500 in? Do you just send like 800 because you'll win? To get that strategy.
That's true. Well, kind of working that into that 800 versus 500 brings up to the next one, like the next little fragment. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. So this is where almost like a smaller force, like you could look at the Battle of Thermopylae,
Is that the
the 300
300?
battle. Yeah.
This is Sparta. I
Yeah.
had to.
No, it's good. With like the help of the geography, but they're fighting, like their spirit allowed them to do something that is pretty damn impossible. I don't even know how many Persians were killed in that battle, but
Oh yeah, thousands. Yeah.
quite a lot. So that sort of spirit in the army, that spirit in battle, that spirit in life, do you think it's like helpful? Do you think it'd be dangerous?
Well, I think it can be both for sure. But I think it's interesting because I think we apply that to all sort of like social structures, whether it's the army, whether it's a corporation. Corporations have ethoses and guiding principles. And so it's ultimately about cohesion and the understanding that unfair treatment between your group is going to breed rebellion. It's going to breed mutiny, and it's not conducive to a successful organization.
No, I would definitely agree. But there's also, well, I would agree to the extent of the idea that like there's only a few people that do the majority of the work. Because I don't think every employee within a company has the same spirit, quote unquote. Like for some, it's like a 9 to 5 gig or something, and to others,
but
it
the
could be their whole
corporation
career.
still pushes the spirit. You know what I mean?
That is true.
So
That is
even
very
if the
true.
person isn't receptive, it's still there in an environment in which that spirit is alive.
True. Ayla?
Yeah. Oh, well, I was just thinking to myself, like, if I had a shoe company and I know that my employees might be fighting wars with one another to get ahead, it's going to be much more lucrative to me to say, hey, look at this other shoe company. We're banding together to fight them, not each other. And you kind of create, like you're saying, like that culture, that spirit to kind of give the mind something to chew on that's not in itself, but it's directed towards this other business or rival or something like
Yeah,
that.
the
And you
common
funnel
enemy.
it. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
Nick and I do that all the time.
Yeah.
You ask about marriage and fighting and stuff. I remember when we first started dating, if we had a fight, we would do the classic young person thing and just kind of like be all awkward towards each other. And then like, a car would almost like run us over and we'd be like, fuck this guy. And then we'd have a common enemy and we're fine. We used to laugh about this all the time. It would just kind of be like that one person that you're like, ah, and then we would agree and it would be fine. So, I mean, like, I think it works for sure.
if only the left and the right could find a common enemy. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I thought the coronavirus was the common enemy, but I guess I was wrong.
It was
No,
for a minute, but then,
Things change.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, well, I tend to think about like mutiny and things of that sort is like an overwhelming, I guess, opposite spirit to whatever you're trying to push through in your army, right? Or whatever you're trying to get your group to do. So is it the fault of the general who's not recognizing this change in spirit?
Well, morale is a huge thing, and it's always been huge in war. And part of the general and the whoever the highest leader is, part of their job is to make sure that they are the people that solve the disputes, that met out justice equally, that treat that's why all the good kings and the good generals were the ones that battled with their soldiers. Like instead of being that person in a tent 10 miles away, they were on the front lines with their soldiers. That creates the morale, and it's really about equality, I guess, in a certain respect. Even though the general obviously is in a higher position, he brings himself to the level of the grunt soldier to show that all lives in this group mean the same, and that if the general is going to ask something of his soldier, he better expect to be able to do it himself as well.
Yeah.
Same thing for
I
a
would
ship
definitely agree.
captain. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I was just agreeing.
Yeah, ditto. I was just gonna say,
Uh,
like a ship captain, he goes down with his ship.
Mhm.
And so you have this, the general who isn't just an appointed general, but is a person who's so devoted to the cause, so inspirational that you are so motivated to follow and not let them down. Like, and I mean, think about like a cult, like every single cult, the number one characteristic that all the leader of the cults have is the charisma factor. And
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
all of their agents that go out and recruit cult members, they have to have a certain level of charisma as well. And so I think that this kind of like personality type where you're so devoted and you're inspiring because of that devotion and selflessness is a huge motivating factor.
So you can always change the spirit of the army, is what you're saying. Even like in the worst case, morale is the lowest it's ever been with whether it's a company or a company, ironically. There's always a chance that one sort of general or hero type figure can come around and boost that morale.
Yeah, usually back in the day, it involved, womanizing and pillaging. That's how they used to boost morale for armies back in the day.
Ah.
I was
Obviously,
thinking of like a JFK speech, like
Yeah, I was
nothing the
thinking,
country can do for you.
well, look, we've had a lot more war in the past, 5,000 years than we have in the past 60. So I'm just saying, like, that's
what are
that's
you
the kind of.
saying?
Huh? Speaking historically here, okay. I was trying to tie it into the corporate structure in just a second.
Oh, please. Okay.
No,
Sorry.
okay.
Oh, now she's interested.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you're going to bash corporations.
No,
then. Yeah,
no.
I'm all in.
Well, no, I think it's just ultimately, like, obviously we're not doing that type of thing to boost morale in corporates and stuff like that. But like Ayla said, the rallying behind a common enemy sort of tactic, or the reaffirming of the ethos. I mean, hell, it goes down even to just giving them some cash every once in a while. So there are ways in which to bring the morale and the spirit back up of your compatriots. You just have to be an aware leader and know when to do it before it's too late.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, so there's a too late?
is
I
it
would
too late?
I would say that there have to be a too late, right? Because we've seen mutinies and rebellions and like the French Revolution. That was a little bit too late. I think that the French aristocracy probably could have thrown the proletariat a bone or two, and they might have, kept themselves out of the guillotine. Problem is
Yeah.
that they did way too late.
Yeah, if people are starving, they don't want to eat cake. They want meat and potatoes.
Right.
They want carbs.
Yeah, every cake.
I know. And well, she was like 14, 15 or something. I mean, like you think about
She
so
never
many...
really even said that. That was actually not something she said. But
What?
yeah,
Mind blown.
Marie Antoinette actually didn't say let them eat cake. It was some sort of, like, it was kind of like a propaganda in order to bolster the revolution.
You a sympathizer, Nick?
It worked.
Yeah.
But you know what else I was thinking about in terms of morale is it made me think of The Gladiator with Russell Crowe, another 90s movie. That's going to be my thing, people.
93
every
movie?
time.
Yeah, no, that one's a little
Came
bit
out
later.
later.
She's progressing in the timeline. That's about 98.
Growing
or
up,
something.
we're so happy.
Stop. But like at the end, right? Like this guy, he's gone through so much crap, and everyone around him is watching him rise and rise and rise over and over and over. And they keep doing more crap. By the end of the thing, when he finally stands up and does his, I think he kills Caesar, and then he dies or something.
Yes.
But it was this idea that this one man was put to every single test, and with his dying last action, he upheld that ethos or that commitment to fight the man, and that sparked something in people. He did it to his dying breath, and I think that that's something too that you have to be cognizant of in terms of a mutiny or whatever. If you have someone who's so committed, that shit's inspiring. It makes other people get off their ass and go oh crap, I could do more too. So there's those pictures too.
Yeah. No, sorry for interrupting. But
No, I mean that's exactly right.
yeah, I get it. We do have two other points, but we're getting low on time. I think we should save them for the next exobits.
No, I mean we can keep going.
Do
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah,
hammer through them?
let's finish it up.
Alright.
We, this one will go a little bit longer.
Yeah.
People
I
will
guess
have to deal with it.
I guess I prepped 45 minutes of stuff. My bad.
Fine.
So what's the
45.
difference between an exofathom and an extrobit?
Probably about
Exobit?
15 to 30 minutes.
No, but I mean like
About
we need
3
a
beers.
name. No, we need a name. I'll find out a name. Call us a new playlist.
All right. Next one. Let's keep on rolling. He will win
Mhm.
who prepared himself, wakes to take the enemy unprepared. And I think this one is like I find it the most interesting because there's like an element of scheming happening and there's a waiting for the unpreparedness of the enemy.
hmm
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because this is a millennia old Chinese philosophy, and I think they're practicing it on us right now.
You don't say.
Not to get into the politics of today because I want to keep to this sort of thing. But
And because who knows what's happening today,
Oh,
truly.
I know. Yeah, truly.
I
Right.
just don't know that anything's.
Yeah. But no, I think that this is very critical. It's very critical to understand when you need to lay in wait. And sometimes you can realize that if you do nothing, sometimes your enemy will trip themselves up. And all you have to do is take advantage of an opportunity or an opening that they might have. These are the type of strategies that tend to win wars over the long run. I think that there's a lot of strategy where, you go in hot and you do the show of force sort of thing. But there's something very underhanded about lying in wait and waiting for your moment.
Oh yeah. Well, especially if like like in the Civil War, the North had an edge because they had more resources, and so if you know that your enemy is deficient in resources, you can just wait them out. And I learned recently from some show or book or whatever. It was The Mist. I'm watching The Mist on Netflix, Stephen King novel, and they're talking about 9 meals away from chaos or something like that. That like all of humanity is 9 meals away from chaos. So imagine you only have 9 meals left. Well, anarchy could ensue because now you're like, well, where am I going to get my food? What am I going to do? Who do I like? How do I get it? And you start kind of getting that squeeze of the opposite.
Anxiety.
Well, the opposite of abundance. Oh, the squeeze of scarcity. That's what I was trying to think of. And so, yeah, so like you can just wait out your enemy. If you know that they've got scarce resources, you just sit there and you just let them fall in on themselves and then you swoop in. So I think that this one is just talking about being smart and don't go in hot-headed and have a long game versus a short game.
Yeah, never step in while your enemy is unraveling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Just let them make all the mistakes.
That's right.
And like sieging too, because kind of starving people out, that is sieging. That's like siege warfare.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
really effective against island nations because you could just set up a navy around it. And islands
Lock their
usually aren't
resources out.
self-sustaining.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think tariffs are? I mean,
Yep. And
let's
sanctions.
get real. Yeah, there's certain
Yeah.
countries right now that had some sanctions and tariffs on them, and they're facing extreme food shortages. Shortages? Shortages.
Shortages.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Shortages. It just sounds weird.
Well,
But yeah.
do you think that it's a little bit dishonorable though to wait till your enemy is unprepared?
If we're talking about the British form of honor, then I would assume that yes, the stiff upper
the
lip.
British.
Huh? Well,
We are
our
Americans.
Yeah, but our Western honor system came from the British, so that's why I'm saying it. I think that there is a certain level of that stiff upper lip aristocracy, sort of like, oh, we don't need to wait it out; we'll just have our people do it. Like our pawns. Like it's the kind of disregard for the peons. that the maybe sort of like the cavalrymen might have. That kind of that sets you at a disadvantage, because I don't think that there is anything inherently dishonorable about allowing your enemy to unravel and then making your move. I think that that's just good strategy. In fact, you're actually you're preserving more life that way too. Because ultimately, if you can end a country with one blow instead of a million, you should just do it with one blow.
And you would save a lot of your own men.
That's right. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think on a similar token, I think that this is part of the reason why you'll see in history certain cultures dehumanizing their enemy, because now you can retain your honor and do dishonorable things in the name of X, Y, or Z. Yeah, and I think another really cool quote that came to mind, it's from Napoleon Bonaparte, and he says, in the end, although this might not be him, this could be a character from the Count of Monte Cristo, so I will figure this out, but the quote is, in the end, treason is a matter of dates. And I think that gets to the heart of this too, is that like if you think that your goal or your end result or your spirit is an honorable one, then you can do, again, dishonorable things in the name of that virtuous cause, and still call yourself honorable. So I think that gets in a lot of interesting gray areas.
That's where religion and the war machine married each other.
Yes.
Yeah, seriously.
That sounds like a fun wedding.
Yeah, right.
Like a red wedding.
The red wedding? Yeah. Game of Thrones. God, that episode. I was not prepared. I heard so much talk and like I wasn't a fan, and then like a year later I started watching it, and then it all came together.
This is not going to turn into a GOT podcast. I'm
No.
sorry, Ayla. I'm so sorry.
Nor should it, because the end.
Okay.
I'm so mad.
We're good.
All right. Let's move on to the last point.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want me to comment on this dishonorable notion?
If you'd like, yeah, absolutely, man. This is your show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't really think I think all is fair in love and war, as you said. I don't think there's any dishonor in waiting till an enemy is either unraveled or in a complete state of relaxation that they don't expect a war.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you come across more, I guess, narcissistic enemies, like if you like the United States, you can argue might be unprepared because we're so involved with looking at ourselves that anything outside becomes just unknown or just not even worrying about it, right?
Yes.
And so I don't that's one state of being unprepared. So I don't think there's anything dishonorable in waiting for either that or, as you said, unraveling, or just like a state of relaxing.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, definitely.
Yeah. Right. Well, if you want peace, you must prepare for war. It's a classic Lisa Simpson.
Signus pacem parabellum.
Oh, fancy.
In Latin.
Fancy.
Yeah, so not Lisa Simpson.
No.
I anchor like all my knowledge on The Simpsons. It's cheating, but it works.
No, it's fine. It's good. The last one. He will win who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign. I take the sovereign as like the government or somebody outside who doesn't really have experience in warfare or in battles,
like the civilian class.
Yeah, or like in a company, somebody that comes from outside of the company, or like somebody completely different. So I think like in the simplest terms, it's just let your generals fight the war by themselves, as long as they have the capacity to do so. And the job as a sovereign would be just to play like a support, to give more, to let your generals do the thing, or to let the workers do the thing.
Yeah. Well, that gives you empathy for generals and military folk, because like it's easy to say, let's have nuclear disarmament and, totally just get rid of that. But from a general perspective, they're like, okay, well, I'll do mine if you do yours first. And it's going to come off really douchey, but I mean, but but that's their job, is to anticipate and prepare to protect regardless of what the sovereigns want.
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's right. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Any last thoughts on this?
Yeah. Well, I just want to touch base on that just a little bit because I think that there's something powerful in that, and I think Ayla's right. The concept. Oh, pardon me. The concept of the sovereign kind of not understanding the mechanics of war is something that I think we can all kind of grasp in our modern day. Because as somebody, I'm vehemently anti-war, and I want to bring our troops home, and I want to, not continually be out there in the world, but I do understand when I hear generals and people in intelligence agencies and top officials saying like, hey, look, what you don't understand is that we've spent so much time in these places now. They are, if the moment we pull out, there will create a vacuum in which some other person will come up, and we do not know what that person will be capable of. So in one instance, it is kind of a cop out, but it also is like, well, if they know, they know. And they're going to know more than me, civilian Joe here, who's never done a tour, who's never, been fired at, who's never seen the enemy, so there's something to be considered in that. And that's something that I've had to kind of adjust in my own perspective is, yes, I am anti-war and I do not like it. And I don't want our troops overseas, but you also have to understand that the mechanisms of war are much more complicated than just morality.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And and to add to that, but hold on. See, you had a little sound before your knowledge dropped, so I had to do a little thing myself. But no, I remember back to my international relations class, which I dropped out of. But in the books they talked about a global hegemony, and it's the idea that you need one top dog to make sure all the other folks get along and to kind of like police everybody. And whether that's right or wrong, I think that that's still kind of an interesting concept. Like, is the world ready to get rid of one hegemony actor?
Nope.
Is it ready for a new one?
No.
What
Well, we're
happens in
not.
the transition? Yeah, I mean, like, these are questions that I think are very interesting right now. And
Well, and furthermore, it's easy for us to sit here as the citizens of the hegemony and say that we should, not be in war and blah 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 blah. But the concept is correct. There will be somebody at the top, and if we're not at the top, then we know who's going to be at the top. And if you think the world and America is terrible right now, imagine not being the world's superpower.
Well, and this is why I admit to knowing absolutely nothing about anything, because it is so complex and you can't predict what's going to happen. And there can be events, small or big, that can create a ripple with unknown consequences. And, you just have to kind of be adaptable and flexible and look inward and say, where is my source of honor? How will I conduct myself so that I can sleep at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Oh, I think you're on point. I think both of you are pretty much on point, and like that anti-war point of view.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think comes from a like a civilian point of view, as you were saying, because the game is really played at a completely different level than what we know about. Like, even if you just like the world hegemony, even ignoring that, we have no idea what happens really in intelligence agencies and how wars actually end up being played out. And it seems like war by politician ends up being some like profit grab.
Well, and also too, we don't know. Like, I know someone who's friends with the former president, and like he told me 3 sentences worth of stuff that if I were to tell you would just, it's, I can't say it, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background.
This is where Nick just shuts off the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know I just heard it in passing. I'm just
Ayla,
saying.
stop disclosing state secrets, please.
I'm
Right.
just saying.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think I'm good on this. I think this is a good conversation.
And now I'm like not gonna sleep tonight, but yeah, it's good combo.
It's fun. There's lots of stuff happening.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
cooking.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks, Mike. That was really fun. I very much enjoyed that, and I look forward to your next topic. We're going to be doing some alternating in the next few episodes. I believe on Monday, Ayla is going to be bringing us a show on familiars. So
Oh yeah.
be sure to stay tuned for that on Monday night at 8 p.m. We will be live. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate you. This was an exobit. It took a little bit longer, but it's still a bit, I would say. And I think, we really appreciate you guys. And please give us a follow on Exofathom at all of the social sites. So youtube.com/Exofathom, facebook.com/Exofathom, instagram.com/Exofathom. And please be sure to visit, hold on just one moment.
Thinkering.space.
Yes, be sure to visit thinkering.space, where you can see the whole family of podcasts on Exofathom, the Thinkering Report, the Plank with Joe, and of course, If Numbers Could Talk. Fun fact: we also linked our shop
Merch.
to the to the website, so we got our merch up on the shop as well. Be sure to check that out, and if
Scroll
you want
all
to
the way
buy,
down.
yeah, okay, thank you, Ayla. All right. And if you want to support us, then please consider getting this really awesome official superstitious pigeon shirt that we created from our last episode, if you guys remember. That was about superstition and the concept of pigeons being superstitious. So Mike had said that it was a very good shirt idea, and we said, well, screw it, we're going to do it. So if you want to support us, please consider buying this shirt. It's fun. It's a great conversation piece. People will ask you about it. So
I totally bought one.
awesome. Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to seeing people with our shirts out there. And again, thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate you guys listening. I think that's all I have to say on the promo side. Anybody got anything else before we sign off?
Keep it sleazy, people.
All right. Well, you heard that, Cognonauts. Keep it sleazy. And we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Peace.